And what is good, y'all? Welcome back to the Director Z YouTube page. I am Luis Zapatero, and today we are going to be talking about another Cursed or Nay film movie. Yay! But, again, not gonna be The Crow. That'll be another movie. That'll be another video. There's also another video about the Twilight Zone movie. Well, it's more of John Landis is a fucking monster video. Today we're going to talk about, of course, one of the most talked about. Even if you haven't seen the movie, you probably heard the stories of how it may or may not be haunted. And the stigma of what may or may not have happened in this movie has become so much bigger than the actual movie. People know the stories around it more than they've actually seen the fucking scenes in the actual film. And I'm talking, of course, of the Tobe Hooper directed, or Tobe Hooper, I don't know how to say it, Steven Spielberg production, Poltergeist. And if you guys don't know, a bunch of stuff happened. There was rumors of, like, real skeletons, apparently skeletons from India, according to certain posts and Reddits. I may have went a little bit down the Reddit hole. And then there was everything that happened with Heather O'Rourke and everything that happened with Dominque Dunne. And, there were still some circumstances around the sequels as well. But it's mostly around the deaths and mostly around the skeletons and some of the stuff that was happening. But, of course, when you're dealing with the subject matter of, the little girl going, "They're here," when she's actually talking about the spirits in the house. If you haven't seen the movie, please don't go any further in this video if you haven't. It is an incredible film. Please go watch it. Poltergeist is great. And the two sequels, I'm actually pretty big, not big, but I'm actually pretty fond of. I don't mind them. So anyways, let's just get right into it. So it's like I said, the curse of this movie has kind of become bigger than the actual movie itself. But, there was the whole JoBeth Williams scene where she falls into the pool and there's skeletons in there. And then there's the rumor that, once again, this is a spoiler. There's a rumor that the boy claims that the little clown doll, that iconic thing that if you know the movie, you know what clown I'm talking about. I don't like to show it because it is a little bit of a creepy fuck. But yeah, apparently the boy claims that the machine malfunctioned and was actually choking him in the movie. The thing's supposed to be possessed and coiling his neck. So yeah. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, there's also a Scary Movie 2 scene that makes fun of this exact movie, if you know what I'm talking about. So anyways, let's continue. Okay, so whether or not this movie was cursed, I guess the verdict is still kind of out on that. But mostly everyone likes to point at the deaths of Heather O'Rourke and the deaths of Dominque Dunne, and then Julian Beck and Will Sampson in the sequel, of what happened with these movies and how they're all cursed. Okay, let's just start with the obvious. The star of the movie was obviously this little girl right here, Heather O'Rourke. And she was the star, she was the central little girl that says the iconic line, "They're here," she's looking at the TV. And then, I think she lost, or an animal died in the beginning of the movie, and then they buried it, and she's learning about death, and she's praying, and then she's like, "Can I get a hamster? Can I get a birdie now?" She's all, trying to forget, let me get another pet now. So yeah, just the automatic first charisma, and she has it. When it comes to the acting, child acting, energy, she has it. So automatically, you already know that this girl was meant to be a star. So it's very, very tragic what happened to her. Even if you don't know the full story, you know that she's a Hollywood actress that was starring in 3 of these movies that died tragically. Not on the set or anything weird like that, but she literally dedicated her whole acting career to these movies. And the movies are actually that much the better for it. They're really good. The first one especially because of her. And, of course, the JoBeth Williams and Craig T. Nelson and Dominque Dunne, of course, but she was really the heart of the first movie and of the next 2. But another tragedy we have to talk about, of course, is what happened with Dominque Dunne. You don't know what happened to her. She was another person that died while filming was happening. But this is also something I should probably get out of the way that could debunk whether or not this was a curse. Okay. For those of you who don't know, at the time this was filming, Dominque Dunne was involved in a relationship with a man named Jack Sweeney. That the picture on the left is when he was with Dominque Dunne, and the picture on the right is a more recent picture. Unfortunately, the man is still around. So yeah, Jack Sweeney has had a history apparently of domestic abuse with ex-girlfriends. So this is going to tell you what happened. Dominque Dunne was supposed to go on set, but apparently there was an altercation with him as well as Dominque, and something terrible happened. The altercation basically led to her being bruised and bludgeoned and strangled. Dominque Dunne would be beaten so bad by Jack Sweeney, she would end up in a coma. And yes, he caught a court case for it. They unlooked and they saw other domestic abuse charges from ex-girlfriends that this monster has had. And while she was in a coma, she would not recover. Unfortunately, Jack Sweeney murdered this woman. And a lot of people, even during and after the filming, were saying that she was in a very complicated relationship. Instead of just saying that he was an abusive, murdering monster. They're just trying to brush it off like she did it to herself. Like, the girl was young. Don't do that. Like, don't just, like, say, like, oh, no, well, like, she did it to herself. Like, she knew what she was doing. Like, no, dude. Jack Sweeney's a fucking monster. And he killed her. Fucking beat her and strangled her into a coma, and then she dies and succumbs to the coma. And people are still trying to make the connection, like, oh, no, she died because of Poltergeist. No! She died because of her abusive piece of shit boyfriend. And he caught a charge for it. You're not going to believe this. This motherfucker was sentenced to 10 years in jail. He only served 3 of them, and he was released. For what? I don't know. Good behavior or some other bullshit or something. Anyway, so that's the whole thing with my story of the Dominque Dunne thing. It wasn't any hauntings. It wasn't any cursings or anything like that. I mean, maybe. There's the verdict's still out or whatever. I'm not like a supernatural authority on that stuff, but the Dominque Dunne stuff, I just want to get through it right there. Jack Sweeney has previous domestic abuse charges from ex-girlfriends. He got a 10-year sentence and he only served 3. And Dominque Dunne was murdered by Jack Sweeney. Just making that clear right now. Don't want any kind of confusion. And now we move on to the haunting and pretty crazy coincidental curse, air quote, stuff that happened on Poltergeist 2. This man is known as Will Sampson. He was an actual shaman, and he showed up on the set of the second movie in order to exorcise any spirits and demons that were on there. Keep in mind, he is an actual shaman. 2 years after Poltergeist 2 was released in theaters, this man would die at the age of 53 to kidney failure and malnutrition. Okay. Yeah, that's... I can admit, that's when it starts to get a little cursed-esque, if you will. They're doing the second movie. This guy supposedly got rid of all the stuff, and he was still, as a shaman, they're not supposed to die that young. At 50s, they're supposed to live a relatively long life. You ask shamans in Nevada, there's shamans in Arizona, there's shamans in the north and the southwest. They live relatively long lives. They don't die that early, so it was pretty crazy to hear that. And then there was the death of this man. Oh, sorry. Julian Beck, who played, the Reverend... What was his name? Reverend Kane. Yeah, he had the black hat and stuff like that, yeah. And he does the thing where he's on the gate and he's like, "You're gonna die!" Like, iconic. So yeah, for Poltergeist 2, this guy, the cult leader, Reverend Kane, died of stomach cancer during production. Yeah, that's another thing. One thing that also didn't really try to sit well with me was that in the third movie, they, I guess in the script or the director or whatever, they were asking for this character back despite the actor Julian Beck passing away. So what did they do? They put an actor named Nate Diaz in a mask that looks an awful lot like Julian Beck. And I don't even want to show it because it looks pretty horrendous what they did with it. Like, it feels like they made like a likeness right mask of this guy and put it on some other dude. And it just feels weird. Everything about the third movie is just weird. And the thing is, a lot of people were trying to make connections with the deaths with Dominque Dunne and like the deaths of Will Sampson and now Julian Beck. They were trying to connect the fact that it was all happening while these three movies for this topic and this movie were being made. And it goes into that topic and that concept of magical thinking, where you go into the belief of the supernatural. And the supernatural can mean so many things, luck, superstition, and destiny, mind over matter, or life after death, yada, yada, yada. And then, of course, objects carrying on essence, which is kind of like the whole deal with like a lot of haunted house movies and stuff like that. The law of contagion, according to this magical thinking thing, which is something I'm still very new at. Law of contagion basically states that certain mental properties like good and evil can be transmitted to certain objects and or inanimate things through contact, through long time ownership, and through people holding it and looking at it or like having sentimental value with it. So we apparently infuse inanimate objects with agency. As human beings, we've just been doing it since the beginning of time. We tend to look at things like if it looks evil or if it feels evil, you're not really gonna like fuck with it or mess with it. Like if someone offered you a jacket, a Nazi-worn jacket that was worn by none other than Adolf Hitler himself, would you put this jacket on? In your mind, would it occur to you that, oh, it's just a jacket, like I don't mind, I'll put it on? No. It's been touched by evil. It's been tainted by evil. One of the most evil men in history put this coat on. And there are still those people that believe in the superstitious and that law of contagion of like, if an evil person has put his energy and his properties and personality into what he's touched, if I touch that, by the law of that same property, I will have evil be introduced and infused into me. In a way that also kind of goes hand in hand with what people believe to be curses are. Whether an object or a film set or a person or like if something could be haunted and or cursed. Whether what you believe, can a person be cursed? Can a person hold a curse? Can an object I hold have a curse and that I be cursed no matter what I do with it if I burn it or throw it away? That's the thing. Anything from a horror movie. It's always believed that some people, that it has like a touch of evil. It's a prop, it's a house, it's something that the actor held while they were shooting a movie like this. There are people that, still have that uneasy supernatural feeling that, I shouldn't fuck with it. It was in a scary movie. I don't know why. Okay. So, now we move on to the third movie. As you know, this is what Heather looked like for the first relatively two movies with Craig T. Nelson and Will Sampson and Julian Beck and everyone else. At the time of Poltergeist 3, Heather O'Rourke would be the age of 11. And because of a certain anatomical birth disease that she had that not a lot of many people knew, apparently she had Crohn's disease. And during the filming of Poltergeist 3, a lot of people noticed that she was a little inflated in the cheeks. But that's because her condition actually causes inflammation. But here's the bad part. She was diagnosed while they were filming the movie. And yes, while they were shooting and while they were filming, they noticed that she was a little flushed in the cheeks more. But here's the terrible part that still kind of either reinforces the curse or it dispels it, to however you think. This poor girl was treated for a disease that she did not have. So Heather O'Rourke's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the doctors that were treating her. Apparently, the doctors were treating this girl for bowel inflammation, but she had an obstruction. If you don't know what that means, she basically had a congenital birth anatomical defect. It's an abscess in her intestine that was collecting bacteria and all of these toxic substances, and it just kept collecting and collecting the older she got. And they were barely diagnosing her by the third movie, so she might have had this for a long time. So while the doctors were treating her for bowel inflammation, She's had this balloon, this abscess in her stomach that has been collecting all kinds of toxic bacteria and fecal matter and stuff. And while this inflammation might have given the doctors the impression that her stomach or something was inflamed, her intestines were actually swelling up like a balloon and collecting all kinds of. And it exploded. So she died. And the people on the film did not want to finish this movie at all. They had a. Like, everyone was either crying or mourning, or they went to LA to be the director of the movie went to LA to be the pallbearer at her funeral. Like, the family knew him that much, and he was so close to her and tried to make her feel comforted throughout the movie, even despite it being a scary movie. There was even a part where the director remarks how much fun she was having, where she looks in a mirror and she puts her hands on there and her fingers like lock with the mirror image, and she's like riding a mirror up and down screaming. But she recalls having so much fun, and it's so sad when you realize that this girl was only 11 years old, taken from us too soon, and she could have been a worldwide talent. She could have done anything with her life if she wanted to quit Hollywood. She gave us 3 incredible Poltergeist films. And then she died. And they had to put a memoriam in the movie. And the director was adamant on saying, no, I'm not finishing this movie. I'm not going to do an ending without her. Without Heather O'Rourke, I don't want to finish this movie. But MGM said, nope. We put way too much money in this movie. We've invested a lot. You are going to finish this film. So that's why Poltergeist 3 doesn't exactly have the best. Okay, Poltergeist 2 and 3 aren't really the best. But really, the third one, that ending was really half-assed with that high-pitched lady that's in the first one talking about freeing the girl from the other side. And she does this really, really half-assed speech about her having the power and that they don't need Carol Ann. And it doesn't really work because nobody's heart was in it. The director's heart wasn't in it. No one in the crew's heart was in it. They were forced to do this ending. Then they had to get a double for Heather O'Rourke. Like, the director had to tell these actors that have worked with this girl since the beginning, since the second movie, since the beginning of the third movie. My bad. That they had to work with this girl that doesn't look anything like her, and that the mom has to hold her like this with her head down so that people don't notice that this is a double. How sad is that? That studios literally have to strong arm a director and be like, you're gonna finish this fucking movie, even if you have to get a little other blonde girl. Just like, whatever happened to respecting the dead? Like, what is that? Is so messed up. And even when the credits are rolling for the third movie, you can see an in memoriam for Heather O'Rourke. It still doesn't sit well with anyone that has made the movie. It still doesn't sit well with anyone who did the ending. And another thing I want to talk about. Everyone seems to have this idea that, oh, well, if you use real skeletons in a movie, it's cursed. Newsflash, dumbasses. They've been using real skeletons in movies since the fucking 50s. Huh? House on a Haunted Hill, the Vincent Price movie. You can see the marionette lines on the skeleton coming out of the toxic waste. It's a real skeleton. In Frankenstein, when Igor is getting that brain so he could put it in Dr. Frankenstein's thing, he runs into a skeleton. It's real. So saying the argument that using real skeletons will curse any movie set makes zero fucking sense. And even the people that worked on the designs and the makeup and all that, the ones that decked out the skeletons to make them look real in that muddy water scene in the third act where the woman's screaming and there's skeletons coming out of the ground, and Craig T. Nelson's like, you moved the cemetery but you didn't move the bodies. Those are real skeletons. But does that mean that they're desecrating something or doing that? No, there are millions upon millions of skeletons that are donated to the biology and science centers that fucking movies have to get. Because in the 50s, they weren't going to pay someone to sculpt a fake skeleton. They didn't have that kind of money. Apparently, it was cheaper to go to the science place and just get one of those fucking biology class skeletons that they use. Because you got to smell the budget. You got to work with less is more. You know what I mean? So, yeah. in a way, with everything that I've explained, with the horrible misdiagnosis of Heather O'Rourke and the doctors treating her for stomach or bowel inflammation when it was really something else, and the Dominque Dunne domestic abuse charges with Jack Sweeney murdering her, and then there's the whole skeletons not actually doing curses because it's been a practice for movies for a while now. Maybe the movie isn't cursed. I'm just trying to that's why the series is called Cursed or Nay. I want you to just open your mind a little bit. Sometimes we put explanations for things we think just aren't fair. You know? Sometimes we make connections where there aren't any. Like the times of ancient civilizations, of the Mayan and the Mesopotamian and the Aztecs. There were people just looking at disasters and weather like rain and sun as acts of the gods. Even Egypt and ancient China, acts of God. They were just putting explanation to things that they didn't understand what was happening. Maybe there is no curse. Maybe this whole maybe all these curses don't actually happen. Maybe bad things just happen because they happen all the time. Maybe there's no curse films at all and Poltergeist had unfortunate accidents that just couldn't be explained. Julian Beck of stomach cancer. Will Sampson of malnutrition and kidney failure. Dominque Dunne with her domestic abuse and being murdered. And unfortunately, Heather O'Rourke's misdiagnosis from doctors and being treated for the wrong disease. And skeletons not having that much impact when it comes to a film being cursed. Can you tell me what happened on House on a Haunted Hill or Frankenstein? Were those movies cursed? Absolutely not. So yes, could this movie not be cursed? Could unfortunate things just have happened on set? Maybe. Or maybe it is cursed. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe I just made this series just so people can talk about it. Maybe I want this series to make people go, oh, a film set can't be cursed. And then another person goes, well, you don't know that. There's been plenty of evidence that maybe they are. And there are some, non-horror movies that may or may not be cursed, like, Apocalypse Now. But I think that might just be because Francis Ford Coppola is kind of insane. And then there's The Curse of The Shining. That is a horror movie, but I'm saying, there's just Stanley Kubrick being Kubrick. But, like I'm saying, there's cursed movies that are non-horror, and then there are cursed movies that are horror that I'm more focusing on. But I'm sure in the future we will focus on cursed films that aren't horrors. But as of right now, what do you think? What's your verdict? Can you leave a comment down there, or leave a like and share this video of however you feel? And let me know if you believe in cursed movies or not. Or maybe let me know if you just like this series and like these little story times of movies and stuff you didn't know about. Sorry about that whole fucking thing right there. That's just a whole thing I'm trying. Doesn't really work. Alright, y'all. Thank y'all for joining me. I think this is one of my longer Cursed or Nay videos. Yes, it is. It's 23 minutes. Thank you for joining me. Please subscribe, like this video, and comment whatever you feel on the cursed movie thing. I will be doing other series as well. And once again, thanks for joining me, and that is all. Later.